Always, it's me, Emperor AP. Today, I really wanted to go ahead and start discussing the concept of the value of a human life to a macronation. This is a number that macronations come up with to discuss their overall valuation. So, most of the time, we look at things like GDP to discuss what it is that an economy produces, how it works, how it ranks itself amongst other economies based on production. However, looking at production aside, looking at a lot of different factors that are normally taken into consideration, and saying that it's hard to equate that to micronationalism, one thing that is a direct equivalent that we can discuss is the value of a human life. So that's what we're going to be discussing right now. There is a number that your life as a human being in the country that you live in is valued at. So the total population multiplied by that number gives a rough estimate of the value of that economy as well. And that's something that we're going to be talking about. For the US, that number is $10 million, if that's what you came here to learn. But for other countries around the world, it can range most of the time anywhere between $1 million and $10 million. Those are for liberal Western democracies most of the time, but we're going to be talking about that in a little bit. Vincent said, "Hi, AP." Hey, Vincent, how are you? If you guys don't know, Vincent's one of our citizens. Proud to have him here in the comments. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for liking the video, Vincent. You're helping us out. Naka said hi. Elijah Wood said hi. Everybody's jumping in. I appreciate you guys liking the video and supporting us. This is a topic that I think is really surprising to people when I discuss it with them, and so I'm really curious to see what you all think. Let me know how sound quality is. Let me know how the visuals are going, and we will continue trucking along. Vincent said, "My value according to life insurance is $30,000. Right, but that's based on the value that you yourself can apply to your life, which is kind of a problem with life insurance, and we can talk about that one day separately. But for micronations, when we're talking about running countries, when we're talking about these people who are trying to evaluate the net worth of a civilization, we really need to look at these macronations and see what it is that they're doing and how they value it, because it leads to some very interesting concepts in micronationalism, and it also leads to some very quirky understandings of macronational politics and how sometimes macronations will say, oh, this thing is very, very valuable and very, very important, but then they will completely dismiss it as something that they need to invest any money into. And we can see that becoming a flaw and a problem in larger macronations, and see how reinvestment in those ideas can actually go toward benefiting them. They created these numbers for a reason, and if they were to apply their own logic to that, would benefit them greatly. And we as micronations can use that to get a competitive edge and to really understand the types of economics of scale that we're dealing with. So the first, biggest, most important thing to think about is that number. $10 million. That is anyone who is born in the US. Their valuation, according to the US government, is $10 million. Now, that's broken down by federal agencies. So some federal agencies value human life differently than others, and it's because of what they do and how they factor in the total sum of a human life. But as a general estimate, as a rough way to go, $10 million is a good mark for the US and the federal government. So that being the case, that $10 million means if you are homeless in the US, you're worth $10 million. If you are a child that is just born in the US, you are worth $10 million. Anybody who is considered a US citizen, if you moved over, you immigrated, and you have gotten citizenship, you are worth $10 million to the US government. And so what does that mean? What does that valuation have any impact on as far as micronationalism? Well, it means something very key. Micronations are missing out on a large concept. When we think about citizenship, we are thinking about recruiting people from other nations, generally from macronations, in order to become a part of our society, in order to create and develop the thing that we are looking to build for the future. And when we do that, we are really finding trouble being able to cultivate that. When we have somebody who is a citizen of a micronation, and we've talked about this in plenty of other videos, a lot of the time there is a limit to what that means. Micronations struggle to build engagement with their citizens. Micronations struggle to build sincere connections with their citizens. And generally, the more valuable micronations, the ones that people look toward, are the ones that have the most deep connection to those citizens and the most impact on their lives. We are awed by these micronations that are so careful in how they craft their image, and so interested in the development of their people, that we really have to try and understand what that means and why they are doing that. Because the large macronations who these people live in and work in every day have the largest percentage of their time, have the largest percentage of that human life's value, which is what they're pegging at $10 million. So you getting a fraction of that for your micronation, you taking someone's time to focus directly on that nation instead of the US government or their own personal job, their own personal life, is a valuation that can be considered and something that should be considered. And so a lot of the time as micronations, we're sitting around wondering, why is it that we can't get more support? Why is it that we can't do this and that? And it is because of the fact that we don't understand that valuation. It's because of the concept that there is, hold up. Multiple things. I'm gonna jump into this real fast, and then I'll get to the comments. I see a lot of people jumping in. First off, again, thank you guys for liking. We got 6 viewers and 2 likes. Let's see if we can get that like ratio up. Because the more people that jump in and like the video, the more people get shown the video, and so we can have a larger audience here to discuss with. I really want Micronation's opinions on this too, because I've seen so many micronations who come and ask for help, or who are trying to think of ways to improve their civilization, and they don't understand this concept of valuation of the people that they're working with. A lot of the time, humans are expensive. You know, that shouldn't come as a shock to anybody, but the value of your time, you know, whether you spend your time playing a video game online, whether you spend your time developing a micronation, whether you spend your time working a job, whatever it is, your time is very, very valuable. That $10 million valuation is a reasonable thing. And so over the course of your life, you are spending fractions of that $10 million in the activities that you engage in. And so for us as micronations, we are trying to obtain some of that time, because that time is money, and that money is a total of $10 million per person. And so, excuse me, that can be a really quirky and weird thing when we think about the US doing stuff like mass homelessness, not taking care of their citizens, not providing food and shelter and housing, clothing to their citizens. If these people are worth $10 million a piece to you, wouldn't it be, you know, easily worth it to food and clothes and house them? Imagine if I told you for every person that you gave a house, food, and clothes to, you would get $10 million. It doesn't matter how much the food and house and clothes cost, as long as you provide them food, housing, clothing, take care of all their base needs, that you get $10 million out of them. You would do it in a heartbeat. You would say, hey, everybody come in. I can do this for much cheaper than $10 million per person. And so it makes US politics and economics, and just world politics and economics, look a little screwy from that angle. But real quick, I'm going to go ahead and hit you guys up. Empire of Nautica said, hey, I've been trying to contact, my flag has not been changed, please change this. Hey, Nautica, I appreciate it. Again, I just have not been able to get to doing stuff with the micronational map. I will soon, but I just can't give a time specifically. There's a lot on my plate that goes before that. We don't make any money from the micronational map, so everything that we do there is just my time that's taken out, aside from Aeternia, aside from my schooling, aside from everything else, just to do that. So I appreciate you being patient, but that's something that I do just have to put on the back burner until I have the ability to come back to it. Vincent said, also your audio is good, but your video is a little bit laggy. Not bad though. I appreciate it. Let me know if it improves. Let me know if it gets worse. Keep me updated there, Vincent. Nathan said, this is true. Nautica said, yes, a little bit laggy. Nathan says, why no donos available, AP? You can, so you can't necessarily, I guess you could donate to us in some way if you wanted. The best way to donate to us is to buy some of our products through the Imperial Market, or to become a patron of Aeternia. There are people who become patrons of us on Patreon, patreon.com/the EOA. You can do so either to become a citizen, which is only $1 a month on our Patreon, or you can do so to help us to grow and to connect further with us. We have something called the Prestige system, which means anybody from citizens to people who are foreign dignitaries of other micronations to people who are neither and just want to see what this is all about can all participate in the culture and society of Aeternia in different ways. And so there are tiers on our Patreon that associate to additional benefits that you can get by supporting us at a monthly donation level. So that's huge for us. If you really wanted to do something like that, that would be a way to expand our economy immensely. But as well, we're getting into metals refining and metals casting. So as we continue to grow in that, we're going to be posting more and more of that stuff on the Imperial Market. So if you want to, you can go to Etsy at the Imperial Market, all one word, TheImperialMarket, Etsy.com /the Imperial Market. And you can actually purchase our notes, which is Aeternia's currency. You can purchase a whole bunch of other stuff that we have, which are all custom handmade things. A lot of micronations will go through drop shippers to make like flags and coins and stuff like that for them. All the stuff that you buy on the Imperial Market is handmade by us. And so that's something that's real big that we try and push. But as well, we're about to get into a lot cooler stuff. So, making little knives, making jewelry for micronations, making custom medals like, pins, awards, things like that. We're about to be getting into all that. So if you're really excited about donating to us or providing us some support, that's a great way to do so. As well, I've been trying to figure out how to up our Patreon tiers and do a little bit better with that. So if you guys are like, I don't want to donate to the Patreon to become a citizen or to, interact with Aeternia more professionally or whatever, I just want to do it to help the channel out, let me know what we can do to provide extra benefits that would sell you on becoming a patron. Because I want to start getting people in who are just patrons of the channel that I can shout out and say, hey, thank you guys so much for helping us make these videos and helping us get the word out about Aeternia. So keep me updated and give me your thoughts. If there's stuff I can do more in the Discord, I want to interact with our community more, and I want to make this place a bigger and better place for the community to meet. Vincent said, would micronations value human life more than macronations because of how small they tend to be? And that's exactly what I want to talk about. This guy, I was about to say Nathan. Vincent is hitting on the right concept. So, yes and no. Micronations have a lot less of a person's time. They want to, the concept of how good a micronation is versus a macronation is the fact that when you're born in a macronation, you are completely consumed by that macronation. Your life cannot exist well without being constantly consumed by that macronation. When you go to the store, you're spending your money in that macronation. When you play games, you're playing games in that macronation. When you're making friends and meeting people and eating and socializing and doing all the interesting creative things that you're doing, that's all production for that macronation. No matter what you do, your human mind, your efforts, your work, your life in society is creating value for that macronation. The more time you spend in a macronation just by existing, the more you are actually doing for that macronation. And so, that being the case, micronations can value themselves or look at themselves in comparison to other macronations by being able to say, this is how much percentage of a person's time who's a citizen of a micronation we have. So if the macronation consumes 100% of the person's time and then they become a part of a micronation, well, now the macronation may consume 99% of their time and the micronation may consume 1% of their time. But that's still a significantly large number. If you are really taking up 1% of someone's time, let's push it a little bit further to make the numbers easier. 6% of someone's time, right? So, I don't know that that's actually better. If you are taking up a good percentage of someone's time. That person is becoming more and more a part of your nation, is doing more and more for it. I don't think any micronation has more than 1% of any person's time, um, other than the leader of it. I will specify. Leaders of micronations tend to be more invested in their micronation than anyone else because they're trying to get it to grow, they're trying to start it. So micronational leaders may spend a good percentage of their time on micronations. However, micronational development in general of individual citizens usually has a lot less of a person's time. If you're trying to recruit a citizen, that person is going to say, hey, I have these different things I do. I have a life outside of this, but I'm happy to contribute what I can. And so I think the goal of a micronation is to increase the percentage of a person's time that is spent developing the micronation. That's part of the reason in Aeternia we have said for years and years that we only accept micronational citizenship to our nation. If you become a citizen of the Empire of Aeternia, you cannot simultaneously be the citizen of another micronation because you're splitting up your time between us and other micronations. And so the way that we view that is as a percentage of reaching that total 100, that $10 million valuation of a person's life. So when micronations talk about, oh, we want people to come and live on our land and our territory, we want people to work jobs here, we want people to, participate in our online activity in our community, no matter how small the micronation or large it is, they're all ultimately valued by one factor, and that factor is the amount of time that an individual in the micronation is spending on it. And that's an earmark. That's something that is a universal constant across all micronations and all micronational efforts. And it's something that people aren't looking hard enough into. Plenty of people say, well, there's no way for us to really compare these online internet micronations to our serious technological and economic developments that we do here in the micronation of Big Boyistan. So when they do that, they're hyping up and they're saying, well, there's something essentially different from who we are versus those people. Those people shouldn't be considered micronations. Those efforts aren't as legitimate as our efforts, which is completely wrong because they're all ultimately going after those same things. Even these LARPing micronations, even micronations that are directly and purposefully fantasy projects, are still in actual valuation, using up a person's time, which is a percentage of their life, which is a percentage of that $10 million if we're talking about a US citizen. So that time has a valuation. What we need to do as micronations is figure out the way to increase that. So we increase that a number of ways. First one, again, just having that person interact with us. The next one is having that person get some sort of incentive to continue that. So these incentives that we're pushing for are going to be things like, connecting to people online and making friends. Those are small, easy ones that aren't going to get you a lot of a person's time, but are going to hopefully ensure that that person stays around for a little while. So even if somebody's just popping in here and there, doing a little bit here and there for your nation, talking to people on your Discord, doing whatever, that's still enough to have them spending some of their time there, which is a valuation of their time. At a certain point, if you can get somebody to live on your land and work there, that's a completely different scale where instead of that person, using a fraction of a percent of their time over their life, they may be using a significant percent of their life. Now, you may get up to 2 or 3% of their life, and that's a huge number. So that starts to get into serious economic benefits for people, and that's why micronations are so eager to do that, or at least we are in the Empire of Aeternia. That's a scary concept because it takes a lot of investment to do it, but the reason that it's so valuable is because of what you're getting out of it. That valuation is just a showing of that if you have that much of somebody's time and attention, you are going to be getting a lot of production out of them. You're going to be getting a lot of benefit and incentive out of them. And unfortunately, that means that macronations who are doing things like, for example, in Alabama, they're making panhandling illegal. They're attempting to do that on the state level, to say that we already don't want homeless people on state property. We don't want them on public property. They also are no longer able to ask people for money. So you can't sleep on public property. You also can't ask people for money on public property. At a certain point, it becomes unlivable for them. They're getting pushed out of the entire state, which is a shame when you consider that each of those people, by US standard, is considered valued at $10 million a person. So if you instead just fed and clothed and housed those people, and you encouraged them to pursue the full valuation of their time and efforts, that would boost the Alabamian economy immensely. Those people would be the same people who are reinvesting in businesses. Those would be the same people who are spending their money on the internal economy of Alabama. If somebody is really struggling, they're probably not going to be buying things online to get shipped to them. They're probably going to be buying them in stores, in person, directly feeding the people who are a part of their local community. So that's a huge, huge value that is missed in macronations that can be absorbed by micronations. Those are people that macronations are literally filtering through and ignoring, saying that, oh, we don't need these people, we don't need these people, what $10 million here, what $10 million there, and that's a huge pot of money. Speaking about it very roughly, these are human lives. These are people that, really have their own personal development, personal lives, but looking at it from a strictly economic point of view, that's a whole bunch of money that's sitting on the table that's untapped. That's a whole bunch of human potential and life and resources that are being pushed aside or being killed. So this is a really serious topic that micronations can take advantage of. One, to help people in the world, to help people to show their own valuation and to prove to people that they can make a difference in their communities and in their lives, and that has an economic benefit. But as well, that gives our micronations economic benefit. That gives us the opportunity to say, all of these people that you ignored, all of these people that you didn't care about, we cared about, and look at how wonderful they are. Look at how much they're producing for us. Look at how much they're helping us. Why did you turn your back on them? And so, for micronations, I think that should be a huge, huge investment, not only in comparing ourselves to other micronations, and not only comparing ourselves to macronations, but also in looking at and plotting our own progress. Nathan Snively says, as AP is getting at, no, because you only capture a small percentage of their value. So yes and no, Nathan. I definitely, he was responding to Vincent saying, would micronations value them more? Yes, micronations do value them more. Not saying that price point is any different. The value of the human life stays the same because you're not getting more economic output out of them. You're getting less economic output out of them. But you're going to chase an individual a lot more than a macronation is, because you don't make as much money as a macronation does. Your economy needs those people, so your entire political agenda, your nation's entire industry and movements from a foreign relations point of view, from an economic and cultural point of view, may be to chase individual citizens and trying to get those individuals to join your nation. That's why so many macronations put out such propaganda and try to, spread awareness through social media. They are trying to scavenge for those citizens, for those people's little bits of time that they're willing to offer. So yes, micronations value that a lot more because it is the essence of their survival, though that does not change the economic value of an individual human life. Vincent says, maybe not their value money-wise, but them as a person. Yes, 100%, Vincent. I think that's right on the money. Also, we have 8 viewers, 6 likes. Thank you guys for liking the video and helping us to get it out to more people. Again, I feel like this is a concept that's slept on. This is a concept that micronations are passing by and not understanding, and if you did, it would change the way that you develop a micronation. So thank you guys for helping us to get that out there to people. If people that micronationalists who are trying to develop, have been struggling with trying to develop citizenships and trying to get people involved, trying to figure out what they're going to do and how they're going to go about it to actually grow and develop their micronation. Get those people in this chat. Get those people talking to us, because I want to hear those questions. I want to hear those concerns. I want to hear people saying, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Let's discuss this. Let's see where the problems are lying so that we can fix them." Especially because there's so many micronationalists who leave micronationalism, who say, I can't do this anymore because there's no forward momentum. There's no way for me to do any of the things that I want to do. And it sucks so bad to hear that. It breaks my heart every single time, because I know that those people can do something positive for their communities. And I know that there is enough people out there who would be interested in those great ideas they have. Vincent says, AP, have you ever thought about growing cotton to make Aeternian cotton products, or do you think that's a lot of work? I would say that's a lot of work for the amount of land we have. So cotton is a cash crop, and it's a popular cash crop in Alabama. However, cotton requires a lot of land to grow in a decent amount. And at this point, cotton is such a cheap commodity that it would require a lot of us to produce very little for our own citizens. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't invest in that eventually, but I actually think there would be cheaper alternatives to us getting cotton without needing to grow it ourselves. And I want to talk about that in a future video at some point. I've had direct ideas about Alabama's cotton industry and stuff that we can actually use today to help benefit Aeternia, but that's here nor there. Cotton takes a long time to grow. When you harvest it, you want to be as efficient at harvesting it as possible. So you want machines that can do it really quickly and really well, because you may be selling large bags, pounds of cotton for very, very cheap to try and compete with others who can grow, 800 acres of cotton. So you are going to have a really hard time competing with those people with a very small amount of cotton. And it just, I don't think would be worth it necessarily to go about trying to grow it yourself, but there may be ways to get that cotton at a cheap price point that we can reuse whenever we need to. That being the case, moving on from that, there are plenty of things that we can do that, again, will increase the amount of time that citizens spend in Aeternia and can help us to develop those rewards and incentives for those people. The point of Aeternia right now is to take the people who are already supporting us and already making a name for themselves in our empire and actually giving back to those people and saying, hey, as Aeternia has developed, do you feel like your citizenship has improved? Do you feel like the value of what you're doing here has improved? Do you feel like you get more out of it? And that's what we're always trying to push toward. We've had difficulty doing that because most of our citizens are not close to us. I can't go next door and shake my citizen's hand and say, come on, let's work on a project. Come on, let me feed you and your family. Come on, let me give you a place to stay tonight. And that's something that we want to change. But for right now, there are plenty of things that we can do online to make that a little bit different. And there are plenty of things that we can do to push forward finding citizens in our local community to help bridge that gap a little bit more. Michael Ryan says, hi. Hey, Michael, how are you? Michael Ryan says, there's no way to value life. According to the US and most of the countries around the world, that would be incorrect. Nathan says, the value he's attaching is quantified based on governmental department evaluations. That's a great point, Nathan. Comes out to $10 million, or roughly $4 an hour. Ooh, that's interesting. How did you come up with the $4 an hour thing? Michael Ryan says, I understand, but there's no way to correctly calculate a life's value. Again, I feel like that's not necessarily, like, I understand personally, there is no way to value personal experience because it's yours, right? But there is, on a macroeconomic scale, a way to value human life, certainly. Nathan says, it seems like he's taking it from a purely industrial standpoint, not taking a moral value into account. Agreed. Simulia says hello. Hey, Simulia. How are you? It seems like you're a Republic. It seems like you're here in our comments trying to learn a little bit more about micronationalism. But let me ask you this. How do you feel about the valuation of your citizens? Do you feel like you get to spend a lot of time with your citizens? Do you feel like your citizens spend a lot of time in your nation? Or are they busy? Are they doing other things? Do you have trouble with that? Let us know the concepts about Simulia. Nathan says, I don't think I necessarily agree with the numbers, but it's a solid enough basis. Agreed. And it's something that we can directly compete against. They're saying it. The macronations are saying, this is how much we value a human life. that person who is sleeping on the street that we're not feeding, that we're not clothing, that we're not housing, that we're not educating, is worth $10 million. That person who died freezing to death because they didn't have a place to sleep in the middle of December during a freeze, $10 million. That person that we denied cancer treatments to, $10 million. Like, ooh, these are things that we can make a difference on. Simulia says, thank you. That was very helpful. Of course. Nathan says, that's touching. On another key point, economies are better at scale, making growth hard. Agreed, but at the same time, there are plenty of things that we can do. And that's what I've been doing as I've been developing Aeternia and as I've been spending more and more time in the micronational community. Micronations feel like, oh, well, you have to get to this certain size to really be able to do anything. And so there are plenty of micronationalists who honestly believe, oh, micronations are never actually going to do anything valuable. Micronations are a cool hobby or whatever, but you can't really take yourself seriously as a micronation. You can't really do any of this because it's just never going to happen, right? And that's silly because we can make legitimate differences in people's lives. We can legitimately be able to grow and compare ourselves to macronations. And if we set up the right structure for doing that, sure, it's not going to happen overnight. Sure, it may take generations of a community's life cycle to be able to like get to a point where you're competing on larger scale with macronations. But that doesn't mean it's not possible. Countries, governments are created all the time and have been created all the time throughout human history. It's just that doing it in a modern sense requires a different set of skills and requires a different way of thinking about it. You have to be really technical. You have to be really analytical about how you're going to go about growing it, because every single step of the way it's going to be criticized. Every step of the way it's going to have its new difficulties. Every step of the way it's going to require rebuilding certain aspects of it and reforming it to better fit the society that you want. So this is a huge undertaking. It is defining and creating a civilization, a way of life for people, and that's hard. But using metrics like this and saying a person's life is valued at $10 million over the time that they spend in it is an incredible way to understand that value to people, understand what your nation provides to people, and understand how they value it. It's a natural response, and I think that's an amazing point to start analyzing for micronations. Michael Ryan brings up, one problem with micronational worth is directly related to macro citizens being taxed, and again paying fees or taxes to micros. If a micro really offered free land, power, resources, etc., it would help. I agree, Michael Ryan, and that's part of the reason why we're trying to do that in Vitae. Our territory in Vitae is here in Alabama, but it's under the difficulty that right now it's completely undeveloped. So we can offer that to people. We can say, hey, come here and live and work with us, but we don't have a house for you yet. We don't have plumbing for you yet. We don't have electricity for you yet. We don't have food for you yet. And so there's a very small value that becomes, because we're not going to sell people the land. Otherwise, we would be removing value from our nation. We have to increase the value of our nation, but we also need to provide those people something that is incredibly valuable so that they can feel it worth it to spend their time and money there. That being the case, we have to be able to build those things, and that's a large investment. When people talk about micronational citizenships and when they talk about this growth and progressing, I think that's the reason that it's so hard for micronations to continue, and why so many micronations stall out and die, is because they're not understanding that the thing that you're going after, the people that you're looking to try and recruit, are valued at $10 million a piece. The fact is, most micronations cannot afford citizenships. They're valued too high. The citizenship that you have in your micronation is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a person's time and interest. And so in order to grow the value of that citizenship, you have to actually grow the value that they are receiving from it in order to get them to spend more time there. And that's a complex thing to do, especially when you don't have the money to just throw it at willy-nilly. Micronations, a lot of the time, who are pre-funded. micronations like Slowjamistan that come from a radio station, that come from an industry that's already been built and developed around them, they have money. They're able to throw that at it. There are plenty of micronationalists who work 9 to 5 jobs and who are adults in their 20s, 30s, 40s, who are taking their funding that they get from their jobs and throwing it at their micronation, which is an easy way to boost it up. But even then, those people are still struggling. Malassia's like YouTube subscriber count is, I think, like 13 or 14,000 or something like that. Like it's not a crazy insane amount, and they have worldwide press coverage. The same thing with Sealand. The same thing. Sealand may have like 20,000 or something like that. All of these different groups are incredibly powerful, have a lot of valuation, direct money that they get in based on their GDP. However, those groups still do not have large swaths of citizens and citizens that are really focused 100% of their time on those micronations, because that's a $10 million valuation per person. And so no micronation is coming close to that. That's understanding the dilemma that we're in. And that's also understanding our way out of it. Being able to increment the value of your citizenship to move more and more into those people's lives, and to be able to get them interested and excited in investing that time and effort into your nation, because they know that it's going to get them more benefits in the future. And even they feel those benefits and reap those benefits as they're putting more time and effort into it. That is the way that you can increment up to that $10 million valuation. So like Michael Ryan says, doing things like providing housing, providing clothes, providing food and water. Those things are crucial. Simulia says, Simulia is trying to form diplomatic relations. Do you think micronations should have a strong economy for alliances? I would say that's relative to the size of the micronation and what you're trying to do. A lot of micronations will come to Aeternia and say, hey, we really want to do stuff. We have these chicken eggs, or we have, these vegetables or whatever that we produce, or we have, this or that or the other that we produce, and we want to send them to you. And that, for a micronation, is very valuable. However, that may not fit directly with what we're interested in trading. It may be cheaper for us, and in fact is cheaper for us, to go to the store and buy eggs or tomatoes or whatever else it is, potatoes, than it is for us to get them shipped from you, because you have to pay shipping prices on that. You have to, you're dealing with a very limited quantity. And so you're naturally going to have to charge more than you would at the store to be able to get those items. So that may not be something super valuable. But if you said, hey, we can create online content for you and it doesn't cost us anything to send it to you, that's something that can be incredibly valuable. So I think micronations really miss a lot of small ways that they can increase their economic value and can genuinely pursue valuable relations with other micronations. So really think about that. Think about what it is that you can do at the scale that you're at. Think about what it is that gives you the most benefit to other nations, and start trying to provide that, and start trying to reach out to those other nations, because that's going to be the way that you really drive forward that progress. And I think that is how you create a strong economy. Whitewind says, sorry I'm late. I was eating dinner when I wasn't hungry. Oh goodness, interesting. Well, I hope you're full now. If you weren't hungry already, I guess now you're super full, but I hope you're doing well. Also, 6 viewers, 9 likes. Thank you guys for liking the video. Y'all are helping to bring us all together. Whitewind says, wait, so the actual minimum pay is $4 an hour? No. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the value of a human life. So even when you're not working, you are valued to the government at around $4 an hour for the entire span of your life, which would be, $10 million total. If you, are born, you're valued at $10 million. When you die, your life's valuation was $10 million on average to the US government. So we're just talking about that as a concept for connecting to other micronations, valuing our micronational citizenships versus macronational citizenships, and in general, a way to understand how we prioritize the things that we do for our citizens in order to develop. Excuse me a second, guys. I'm going to turn on the car. I'm getting a little bit toasty. Okay. Vincent says $4 maybe back in the 1920s. Right. And so that's why we're not talking about that necessarily. We're talking about, and I'm not sure where the $4 came from, $10 million valuation of a human life, which is from 2020. Ronald says, deep question. Nice to see you online. Good to see you, Ronald. If everybody doesn't know, Ronald there in the chat is King Carminate of the Kingdom of Arcovia. They're based in Mississippi, and we're excited to see him here. I just recently joined their website, Hubzan. It's been pretty interesting. Samulia says, we're a small micronation and our people are very eager to learn about micronationalism. Well, then you've come to the right place. We have multiple playlists. I would check out our How to Micronation playlist to really get a good feel for the basics of micronationalism. We go through and cover a lot of stuff. We also have a micronational economics series specifically, and that's something that a lot of micronations don't talk about. So if you're interested in any of that, definitely go and hop on our playlist, check that out, and check out some of our more recent videos because a lot of those have been slept on a little bit too. We just recently upgraded our can crusher for developing our metals refining industry, and that's something that I think a lot of people didn't watch initially, but I'm hoping that it'll kind of build up some traction because it's one of those intermediate steps. A lot of people ask, how do we get from here to there? How do we increase our value? How do we do all this stuff? It's from those little things that seem boring on the outset. It's from learning about how these little incremental steps build up to the much larger things that are nicer to show off. At the end of that video, we actually show a haul of our treasury, not necessarily our economic treasury as far as our currency goes, but our treasury as far as how much metal we have melted and the different types of metal. So we have like a stack of aluminum that we go through and aluminum bars that we discuss. We also discuss our first CalExit coin that we made, which was contracted by the group Yes California. They paid us a certain amount for a set of 10 coins, which we have 3 of those coins finished so far and are about to be trying to finish up and get halfway done with 5 coins, and then we're going to be producing the rest of them. But that being the case, we talk a little bit about that at the end of that video. So if you go and check that out at some point, that really gives you an understanding of where we're at right now and how you can watch over the years of our development, that slow incremental progress build to where we are now and kind of see in your mind where we're going with it. Ooh, Nathan says my math was off, closer to 14. Yeah, so $14 an hour, meaning $14 an hour when you're asleep. You're valued at $14 an hour when you're showering. You're valued at $14 an hour when you're taking a poo. You know what I mean? Like, all of these things are constant. It's $10 million over your entire life. You existing is value to a macronation. And when we're looking at micronational citizenships, $10 million is more than we can afford. $10 million is more than Molossia can afford. $10 million is more than Sealand can afford. For one person's life. This is huge, and we need to be thinking in these scales to understand the difference between us as micronations and macronational economies. If we're ever going to get there, we have to start drawing those comparisons and figuring out how we can reasonably analyze our economies to increment steps to get there, and that's what we're doing today. Vincent says it also depends on your state for that kind of stuff too. Like hourly rates and pay? Yeah, that's not anything we're discussing right now. Nathan says it might be easier to use modern technological industry rather than manufacturing since that works well at small scale and also scales up quickly. Agreed. Whitewind says, also we have a new anthem here in Whitewind. The new party voted to change it. Hey, cool. Good luck. Send it to us online. I'd be excited to see it. Michael Ryan says, recruit in Haiti. How many there believe they are worth 10 million? Value always based on perception and actual cost based on number of factors. I have a problem with a set number set by any government. Agreed. And like I said, that valuation is generally $1 million to $10 million for liberal Western democracies. That number does change very drastically when you look at third world countries like Haiti. Their economy is much smaller, and therefore their individual valuation of a citizen for them is much smaller. That being the case, they have a lot less opportunities afforded to them. In the US, you have free education, theoretically, if you can get to it, if you can, be housed and, do all of the things necessary to reasonably attend. There is free education out there. There are plenty of things which boost that valuation for a U.S. citizen versus people in other countries. But that being the case, that's still a huge valuation. And even if you're going to one of these third world countries, that valuation is still going to be more than any micronation can afford. So sure, you can recruit in Haiti, but if you live in the United States and you're trying to get people to immigrate to your micronation, buying their visas and stuff like that may not necessarily be worth it for you either. You can do that, but I think there would be simpler ways to achieve similar goals. So that being the case, yes, 100%, it is important to look at that valuation with respect to different countries because that number is going to be different, but that's also similar to evaluating a micronation versus a macronation, where now you're evaluating two different macronations based on how much their economy is worth versus how much an individual citizen is worth to them. So that's a great point. It also shows, again, how the value of those benefits that you offer to citizens really does impact the amount of value they produce for your nation. So again, I think this is a great metric to cover micronational development, and it's slept on. People aren't using it. People aren't thinking about it. People aren't crafting things with it. Whitewind says, Whitewind is becoming a more in-person micronation. One step of moving our micronational base from online to in-person. Hey, congratulations. Sorbenia says, hello. Sorry I'm a little late. Sorbenia, you're always showing up casually late, fashionably late, as they would say. I'm impressed by you. Don't even worry about it. We're glad to see you. Ronald says, we want to provide housing and food source along with building a credible school for the children within our micronation. Very cool. What does that mean by a credible school, though, King Carminate? How did the United States come up with the $10 million valuation, and what is the value for other countries, I wonder? That's a great question. You can Google it yourself. I'll say, again, as I mentioned earlier in the stream, which federal department you look at will have a different valuation. The consensus, I think, is $10 million in general, but that, again, is one valuation from one part of the federal government. So look at different parts of the federal government, how they come up with the numbers that they do, but I think $10 million is a nice factor for the year 2020. We're a little bit off from that, so it's probably a little bit more now, but I think that's a round number to get people thinking about this concept. And again, you're right, other countries have different valuations. Whitewind says, speaking of metal, those ingots look amazing, a ton of them too. Hey, I appreciate it, thank you. Again, definitely go and check out some of the stuff that we're doing. We're hoping to sell those pretty quickly. So not just those ingots, but actually making products for people. So if someone was like, I want coins for my micronation, we're literally making coins right now for an organization called Yes California. We're producing a set of 10 of them in copper, and they're thick and they're big. And so we're doing those custom coins for them. We're going to be doing a lot more custom work here soon. So if you guys are interested in doing that, if you wanted, a cool knife for your micronational uniform or your outfit or whatever, if you wanted a cool pin for it, if you wanted, almost anything that we can make custom for you, we can do that, and we can set a price point for it. So definitely talk to us about it. Ryan says, I don't know, Ronald. Furthermore, is value offset by hyperinflation, ungodly medical and pharma, and location? That's definitely a factor for sure. But again, I think a lot of what we're starting to get into with that conversation is moving further and further away from the concept of that total life valuation and moving into things like industrial economy, moving into things like GDP, moving into things like hourly wages, moving into things like, valuation of medical expenses and things, which are all individual parts of a nation's economy and maybe separate from that number by a significant factor. So it's not that those things won't go into that total, but I don't think that's the thing to focus on necessarily. If you were trying to compare my micronation's healthcare system versus the U.S. healthcare system, you could do that, but right now that's not really, I think, a valuable pursuit for much any micronation. I think it's much more valuable to look at that number as a whole and see, wow, we're significantly farther off from that. Looking at things like wages may be more beneficial. Looking at things like, housing costs may be more beneficial, because those are things that you can prep for and develop within your micronation. Nautica says, I've actually started our first treasury and are using more basic metals. Hey, congratulations. If you want some metals from us, let us know. We'd be happy to sell them to you. Sorbenia says, Emperor AP, did you update the map yet? Nope, I didn't. Nautica asked the same question. I, again, just have not been able to get to it. Last stream, I said, like, oh, for sure I'm going to get to it. And then I had 2 tests drop on me back to back. So, again, those are the micronational map isn't something that we make any money off of. It's something that we do 100% just out of the kindness of our hearts, wanting to spread the joy and love of micronationalism and to promote you guys out there. So, as of right now, I've just been having to put that on the back burner, having to shelve that because I'm not able to work on it with trying to develop first off my education, trying to make sure that I do first and foremost what I need to for my family and for my schooling, and then as well making sure that I continue updating you guys and developing our economy as we need to with finishing up this order, for example, of our call exit coins. So as we continue moving, as we continue knocking out these things that we have lined up, I'll hopefully have a little bit more free time to say, okay, now I'll just run through all of the updates from the micronational map. And that's a lot of the time what I'll do is I'll sit there for, a couple hours and just be like, oh, there's like 40 different requests. Let me go ahead and like knock all these out at once. Oh gosh, I just dropped this. Okay. But so that being the case, that can be a little bit frustrating, and I completely understand that. Waiting on something for a long time is annoying, but because we have limited resources, that's kind of what we have to do at the moment. Nathan says the exact number is irrelevant, Michael. The concept stands regardless. I appreciate it. Michael Ryan says, thank you for the correction and explanation of value determinants. Of course, Michael. I'm happy to. And I'm excited that people are excited about this concept. I really do think it's something that we can use to help understand micronationalism better and quantify it. There's a lot of argument between micronations about who's more valuable than who, or who's got what, and what's more beneficial to approach, and how you develop your micronation the right way versus the wrong way, which I think is a little bit silly, but that is one way to start comparing. Ronald's in a truly objective way. Ronald says, Michael Ryan, good question. Also, I would assume the value of each person should be determined. For example, their trade skills, their age, healthcare, what they can do, or Ronald says, what they can do for their nation. Also, in that sense, females should be worth more simply because they produce population growth for their micronations. I 100% understand where you're coming from. I feel like that starts to get into some tricky areas there. I don't know economically how much that's going to factor in. Of course, you do want to have females in your society, people who are able to increase the birth rate. You're right. But I don't know that that's necessarily accurate, because there are plenty of people, for example, who you would value at, oh, they can increase the birth rate of our society, who may not be able to. There may be women who are infertile. Do you value them less because they're infertile? Do you, say you have to have children in order to value our society? Like, I feel like for the general valuation, you can certainly do it, but I wouldn't spend a lot of time on that, because it's not something that you're going to implement to force that valuation in the future. At least I would hope not. So I just wouldn't factor in things that you're not actively trying to target as development for your micronation. Nathan says, if we're talking about the jump to house land, it's important to find a way to make your housing cheaper than macronation housing. Infrastructure like solar and well water can make it well worth it to them. Well worth it, but yeah, absolutely. That's what we're trying to do. Again, Vitae is a completely undeveloped piece of land, but it is completely isolated from the normal grid. So we can get electrical from the local community there. We can get a power line run, but we cannot get city water. We do not have pipes or plumbing running through the land. So that means we will have to dig our own well, which is beneficial, because that means, as you said, we won't have to pay for water. We'll install it once, but then we can provide free water to our citizens. Michael Ryan says, dinner guys, be well, see ya. See ya, Michael. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight. Nathan says, that's only partially true, Ronald. I don't want to get into gender debate, but there are attributes males that have that balance that valuation out. Again, I just wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't start saying, let's define people's value based on sex, because it's not something you're going to reasonably implement anytime soon into your micronation. And if you are implementing that, you may be focused on the wrong thing, in my opinion. White Wind says, funny enough, I don't have a micronational uniform. I dress casual for White Wind's micronation meetings. Everyone else dresses in suits and ties, then there's me. That's perfectly fine. That's your culture, White Wind. And I think that's something that's really beautiful. There are plenty of different people who have different aspects of what they are focusing on and what they're interested in micronationalism. And you shouldn't let other people change yours. So I'm really proud to see you doing what you do, and I'm excited to see more of it. Ronald says, we plan to work with a crediting association in the future to get our school credited with the United States government that will help provide our education value. Nathan, I personally agree partially simply because of males, because some males may not be capable of doing physical chores or might be mentally challenged. What? Again, why is that part of the valuation? I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I don't think you should start nitpicking the individual based on gender, based on, amount that they are able to work, based on their, mental fortitude. Like those valuations, I think, are really heavily skewed toward bias, and I wouldn't consider that an evaluation. One, because you're not gonna, if you are determining your micronation society, who you accept in based on that's really rough. That is just at a certain point discrimination. I'm not saying that that's the goal necessarily. A micronation could look into that for non-discriminatory purposes, but you're lining up for it. For example, there may be somebody who is handicapped, who is not able to work, is not able to do many things, is not able to whatever, but they may be a beautiful singer. They may be the funniest comedian in the world. They may have the best idea for a movie that you've ever heard. They may just be interesting. And you would never know. That person may have an $800 million valuation once they hit their full potential. That person may become a multi-millionaire if left to their own devices and supported properly. But you would never know, because you would say, oh, well, they can't grow my birth rate, and they can't they can't be educated in the way that I want them to, and they can't join the workforce in the way that I want them to. I don't feel like you should box people in like that. I think the reason that there is that general valuation on a human life that the government has done is because they're saying, regardless of any of those things that you're trying to nitpick about the individual, you existing, a human being born and existing at any state that they are considered a human being, $10 million. $10 million valuation. That's incredible. And I think that's something worth thinking about. White Wind says, POV, AP trying not to get canceled because of the comment, trying not to say the wrong thing. I don't think that's it. I legitimately feel like that's just not an okay thing to do. Alicia Von Doom says, LOL, well worth it. Nice pun. Hi, AP. Hey, Alicia. It's great to see you, Empress Alicia, and of course, Emperor Von Doom of the Draconian Empire. It's great to see you guys. I hope you're doing well, Empress Alicia. Hope your family's doing well this evening. And again, let us know what you think about this. This is a $10 million valuation on an individual person's life. Empress Alicia, as you all are based in the United States, that's a $10 million valuation on you, on Emperor Von Doom, on your kids, as a base for existing. Not including your own personal wealth. That's not including, anything else. Base valuation, $10 million. Alicia says Nathan says not even going to touch that, Ronald. Agreed. I don't think you should really I don't think you should discriminate like that. Alicia says all life has inherent value. Completely agree. White Wind says, Ronald, that's discrimination really, depending on how bad it is. Okay, limit them on what they can do, though do let them do that work. I'm confused on your comment, White Wind. LOL, AP trying not to get canceled, said Nautica. No, it's all good. And I know King Carminate. I don't think he meant it like that. And he's saying right now, like in his comment, he didn't mean it like that. I didn't take it as like a you're discriminate, like how dare you type of thing. That's not what I wanted to get across at all. I'm saying that when you start to approach it like that, when you start to say, well, this person is worth more to our economy than this person because of this and that, you start creeping toward that. If, for example, King Carminate set up a whole bunch of laws and rules based around that and then died, his people may continue in that direction, even if that's not what he necessarily intended. He may have been looking at it from trying to do more precise calculations, but in doing that could create the breeding ground for discrimination. So you just don't, in my opinion, you don't do that. This isn't the way to go about it. Part one, first off, I need to apologize for my comments not expressing the point in the way it was intended. My point was that there should be an actual value, because there shouldn't be any actual value, because a human life should be, and I think he's, sorry, I'm having trouble getting to the comments here. There we go. A human life should be, and then he's got dots. So we're waiting on the continuation. But yeah, again, the reason that I brought all this up is to say that value of human life, once someone exists in, you get born, $10 million valuation. That's what we should be focused on. Ronald says part two should be priceless. The moment we put a price on someone, people will be looked at differently. Not if you value that price the exact same for every person. If you say human life equals $10 million, agreed, that's not accurate to the fact that some people's net worth is higher than other people's net worth in their, the span of their, monetary accumulation throughout their life. But that's not what we're looking at. We're just looking at the concept that if you have somebody spending their time developing your nation, that is inherently having a price tag on it. That is somebody giving you monetary value that they don't have to, that there is no reason other than the benefit that they're getting from your nation for doing. So it's a huge thing, and it's super important for us to talk about, because it helps micronations understand their place in the world, and it helps us understand different macronations' place in the world, and it helps us to understand when stupid policies come out, like the fact that I posted on Twitter. Alabama is completely trying to get rid of panhandling, completely trying to get rid of homeless people existing on public property. So those people, for example, one of the complaints that was brought up in them attempting to pass this bill was, oh, well, there are all of these homeless people who sleep on the side of the road and who ask people for money, and people are just sick of it. It's an eyesore or whatever. And that's horrible to think about human beings that way. These people, again, just by existing, at very minimum, have a $10 million valuation on their life by the U.S. federal government. And so when we're looking at people and turning a blind eye to them, and pushing them away and saying you're not valuable enough to exist in our society, those people produce $10 million a piece just by existing in the U.S. economy. Those people have to eat. Those people have to sleep somewhere. Those people have to do things every single day. Those people have minds that are constantly working and racing and producing. Those people are able to be industrious. Those people are able to be creative and astounding and inspiring. And all of that comes into, again, just existing as a human being. We are so special as individuals. But even just if you take any human being in the world, the most horrible, repulsive human being in the world, you can find a beautiful thought that person has had. You can find some interesting perspective that person has, and that provides value. If you wrote it in a book, you could sell it to people. If you painted it in a picture, you could put it in someone's home. These are things that are super valuable, and that we're really sleeping on as a community of people trying to build the future of the world. White Wind says, that I can agree to. Alicia says, I'd be happy to comment further, but I am unsure of the $10 million for life context. Agreed, the homeless have a right to exist wherever. It's society's failing why they have no home in the first place. Agreed. Empress Alicia, what we were discussing with the $10 million valuation is that if you Google, how much a human life is worth in the U.S., the federal government, as of 2020, and I'm not sure which department this is, different federal... Oh, goodness. Sorry, I'm dropping the phone again, destroying the stream. I just want to make sure you guys are awake, so every once in a while I'm going to just throw the phone and hope that you guys react and it scares you in your house, so that way, or wherever you're at, so that way you know that we're here for you, that we're paying attention, that we know you're supporting us. So that $10 million valuation is different depending on which federal department you're talking about, but it was a nice approximation, a nice round number to just start talking to people about the concept that the U.S. and world governments value individual citizen life at a flat value in a basis. There is a basis for just existing as a human. Not to say that individuals can't earn more or less, not to say that people can have different, net worths in an economy or society, but that the fact that you exist as a human being means that in the U.S., if you're a U.S. citizen, you are valued at $10 million, means that is your base amount of productivity, your base amount of benefit and value to the U.S. economy. Excluding anything, if you never do anything in your life, you're still valued at $10 million to the United States. So why then can we not afford housing for these people? Why is it that we can't afford to clothe people and educate people and feed people? Why is it that it is such a struggle for so many to survive, less the fact that they are worth $10 million just as existing as a body on the earth? That is incredible in my mind. It's a shame that it happens, but it's an opportunity for us as micronations to step up to the plate and to see and take advantage of all of this unused potential that the U.S. and other world economies are completely sleeping on. White Wind says, wait, you could sell yourself away for $10 million, then run away, sell yourself again and repeat? Just a thought. I wouldn't sell yourself. That sounds concerning. Torrance says, whoa. Nathan says, nobody will really pay that. Yeah, you shouldn't do that. Torrance says, what did I miss? We're talking about the valuation that Micronations put on human life. Whiteman says, crazy people will. Nathan says, most crazy people don't have that money. Crazy people come in all forms, but that's not necessarily the context we're talking about. Torrance said, not selling my soul, selling another soul, or hurting a child. Again, that's very far off from what we're talking about. Alicia says, Torrance, I've been here for a few minutes and I'm still trying to figure it out. LOL. The concept is that macronations view human life at the U.S. I'm not going to say all macronations. The U.S. views human life at $10 million base. If you are a U.S. citizen and you are born, you are valued at $10 million even if you never do anything or buy anything or produce anything for the U.S. That being the case, because that's how much the U.S. puts into you, that's how much, you're able to potentially do in your lifetime. That is an average number for a human life for a citizen in the U.S. That being the case, as micronations, we can look at all of this unused potential, all of these people who are not being properly served, all of this societal difficulty that is occurring, and we can understand how we can tap into that for our own growth and development, how we can help people to pursue their maximum valuation based on that. And it also tells us, based on how much of someone's time they are spending developing their citizenship in a micronation. For example, if you have 1% of someone's time throughout their life that they dedicate to helping build their your micronation with you, that it has a dollar amount attached to it. If you spend 5 minutes filling out a survey for Aeternia, or you spend 3 days working on a video project, or you spend years of your life working in and living in Vitae, those are all very different amounts, but that time can actually be calculated for an economic value. There is a baseline economic value that we can put on that, which shows as well why so many micronations have such difficulty with gaining citizens, with keeping citizens. Why it is so hard for micronations to grow is because of the fact that we don't understand that that is an expensive thing. People's time throughout their life is valued, the total amount of time and effort that they put into their life is valued at a baseline of $10 million per person. So it is an expensive endeavor to create a nation. It is an expensive endeavor to chase after someone's time and to try and get that person to build a society and a life with you. But at the same time, when people do that, even if it is a very, very tiny amount, that is an incredible amount of value they are providing to you, and they feel that there is something important and special about what you're doing in order to do that, because their time is so valuable. Our time in modern society is so valuable, there is no reason that they have to spend any time on you. They could be spending it watching things, they could be spending it with other people they love and care about, yet they have decided to spend any amount of time on you and your micronation. You should be incredibly thankful for, and you should be trying to figure out ways to increase that. So it is a standard. It is a metric that we can use to evaluate our nations and their abilities versus a macronation and their abilities. It also allows us to self-analyze and be able to understand what it is that we are able to provide as benefit to our citizens based on the value that they are providing us in their time. So this is a great way for micronations to compare themselves to each other, to compare themselves to macronations, and to understand the value of a citizenship in their society. Oh, excuse me. Oh, congested a little bit. Torrent says, greetings, Alicia. I plan to reach out to you guys soon. Alicia said, great, Torrance. White Wind says, phone keeps falling. LOL. 4 more times. Yep. Nathan says, we're hyper fixating on the 10 million right now. The overarching point is that all time in life has value attached to it. Micronations attempt to capture that value. Absolutely. I think that is spot on, Nathan. White Wind says, I think life price should be more than just... Again, Nathan is right. Fixating on the number too hard. Alicia says, I believe that value is issued to cover debt for trading with other nations, as well as maybe covering additional. Nathan says, your 80 citizens don't spend 100% of their time within the bounds of White Wind. Agreed. Alicia says, military spending. I believe that, I'm trying to understand Empress Von Doom's comment here. She says, I believe that value is issued to cover debt for trading with other nations, as well as maybe covering additional military spending. 100%. But value in and of itself, if you're talking about general value, is just trying to associate the worth of something. Worth and value are synonyms. So that being the case, when we're talking about the value of something, we use money as an analog, as something that we can describe value with. But even removing money, you can say this person's hour is worth 10 apples or whatever it is. It's still the same. It's the fact that as we continue to develop and as we continue to improve our societal standards, such as having improved technology, having improved education, having improved housing, and lifespan in general, health benefits through medical technology. All of these things increase the individual value of a human life because of the fact that a human in a modern society can do a lot and can produce a lot and has a lot of potential. And that's what we're looking at, the potential that somebody's time spent with you or anything is worth. So absolutely, there are values that can be assigned to things like military spending and all of these individual concepts, but on a general approach, there should be an understanding that an individual person's time has a specific value associated with it. And at minimum, the sum of the value of that human life for a citizen in the United States has been valued by economists at $10 million minimum. And again, that's the sum of their time throughout their life. White Wind says they spend around 80% of their time as they accept White Wind's claims to their house. That doesn't necessarily mean they spend 80% of their time, though. Empress Alicia says, I agree that's a messed up practice to have and then fail people so much if they supposedly are valuable to the government. Absolutely. New England says, good morning, Your Imperial Majesty. Good morning, New England. It is evening here, though. Nathan says, putting your actual value more like 40K in humans. White one says, sorry, 60%. Just mental estimate, don't take the 40%, 40,000 to heart. Nathan says, that claim to their houses doesn't realistically mean anything because the time is actually spent in the macronation. I agree with that. If they are spending 80% of their time, then, they would be living and working completely as white wind citizens. You know what I mean? They would go to sleep and they would get up and spend time as white wind citizens. People don't spend 80% of their time as U.S. citizens. It's not that you may not be 100% a U.S. citizen all the time, as many people are, but as millions of people are, but hundreds of millions of people. But the fact is that when you wake up in the morning, the first thing that you think isn't, oh, I'm a U.S. citizen. Like that's not how people operate and live and work. So the U.S. government isn't hitting 80% numbers. You're not hitting 80% numbers for sure. I don't think anyone is. But looking at that time and that effort and understanding people's contribution to your nation as a percentage of their life, which is a percentage of their total value, means that you are getting some value by every second someone spends in your micronation. Alicia says, true that on the time it takes to create a nation and how valuable our time is and other time is. Absolutely. And that's all I'm saying, is that we can use this concept of what a macronation values a human life at in order to understand how expensive it is to get someone's time and how much it is that we are providing benefit to people when they do spend that time with us. It allows us to accurately understand and estimate people's worth. And that's something that I think micronations have huge issues with. And that's why I'm stressing this so much, is because of the concept that micronations all the time run around and say, I don't understand how to get more citizens. I don't understand why people don't want to do more with my micronation. I've come up with all these laws. I've come up with all these ideas. I've come up with an economy and a flag and a law, rule of law, and all these government positions, and I give away medals, and I don't understand why people don't like my micronation. I don't understand why people aren't signing up to give my micronation their time and their money. It's because their time is so expensive. Macronational governments spend a lot of money and time trying to get their attention and their efforts to be focused on the things that that government is interested in. In the US, political campaigns for president last years and years. People will start their political campaigns at the beginning of a president's term and will start developing it and flying around the country and talking to people for 4 or 5 years before they start trying to, and maybe even longer, before they start trying to actually compete in a recent election. So that value is astronomical to those people. That value of being able to talk to somebody for a few minutes is worth them flying to, all these different states and spending millions of dollars on advertising and doing all this stuff because they know that value. And I'm saying us micronations need a better understanding of that, and to be able to start looking at it through that lens allows us to start competing more efficiently with macronations. If we ever want to say that we're going to start competing with macronations and starting to do things at scale like that, that is the way that we do it. White One says, White One has no actual land. All we have is land claims, correction, the actual land. There's a little in my area. Very cool. Nathan says, how would you actually calculate the value provided by citizens for your micronation? Just curious. One great analog for that is to take the value of a human life at, let's say $10 million, right? For a U.S. citizen, $10 million. And then you say, but let's just equate it to anybody. $10 million for any person. Again, this is an estimate. This is something that we're just taking as a number. $10 million for any human being. That's the entire sum of the time in their life. You divide that by, the amount of time that they live. Let's approximate everybody lives to be 80. That's not true, but if we give, an average, $10 million, 80 years. So $10 million over 80 years, you divide that to figure out how much money a person is worth per year. Then you do that for hours. Then you do that for days. Then you do that for hours. Then you do that for minutes. And then you figure out approximately how much time does each person spend in our micronation. You know, when a person writes a comment to us, that's, you know, a few seconds of their time. If somebody makes a video for us, that's a few hours of their time. And that's how you can start to calculate those numbers. And I think that's a really efficient way and a really practical way of calculating those numbers. If you do that, you're not going to be that far off from what the actual value is for your nation. And that value compounds over time, because those things that they're doing, those efforts that they're making, are going to continue to affect the ability of your nation to impress others and to grow their citizenship. White One says, for who are you talking to, AP? I'm talking to micronations in general. I'm talking to Empress Alicia. I'm talking to you, White One. I'm talking to Nathan. I'm talking to anybody who is interested in the concept that we can evaluate micronations and macronations based on this number that they are telling us is the worth of a human life. Again, this isn't the end-all be-all evaluation of people. This doesn't take into account individual concepts. This doesn't take into account a lot of stuff, but it is a great way for us to start analyzing in a practical way. Nautica says, hey AP, have you ever thought about territory or city flags? No, absolutely not. Aeternia is a very homogenous society. That's something that we're trying to do on purpose. We want to create a culture that is all expanding and all encompassing in Aeternia. So while people may have their individual backgrounds and stuff that they come from, we want everybody to be Aeternian and to follow kind of Aeternian ideals. Hey. Tiffany's here, guys, so I am going to go ahead and head out. But I appreciate everybody being here. If you have more questions and comments, let me know, and I will see you all soon. Aeternia forever. Peace, guys.